YouTube, what is up? So here we're gonna be taking a look at Professor X, Charles Xavier from the Marvel Legends Tri-Sentinel wave, and yeah, House of X. So before we even get into anything in regards to House of X, like how did we get to this point? Like a lot of people are confused and really don't know the backstory on how Professor X, Charles Xavier, got uh, to this point and in this body. Well, people are saying that this is Phantom X's body, which is not true. Um, so we're gonna get into that. So in order to get to that point, we got to start at the beginning, and this took place in Avengers versus X Men, where the Phoenix Force pretty much was choosing, uh, you know, someone or something to put its power into, right? Similar to the way it did with Jean Grey, and eventually 5 X-Men were chosen, to host the Power of the Phoenix, and Scott Summers was one of them. The other four, it really doesn't matter. They end up dying off, and the other Phoenix Force members absorb their powers, and uh, Professor X, wanted to confront, Scott while all this was going on, and the last two members of the Phoenix Force were Scott Summers and hmm, let me think about the other one for a second, because it was the last two. It would have been Scott Summers and the White Queen, Emma Frost. There you go. So while this is going on, they're in a battle. The Avengers came to aid Professor X, and Scott deliberately kills Emma Frost and observes her power becoming more powerful, and pretty much having the full power and full force of the Phoenix Force, if you will. And he eventually loses control, and he kills Professor X, right? And it gets a little sketchy from this point, because then you have the Red Skull, who's not necessarily the Red Skull, but like a clone of the Red Skull, and that's where he kind of I think that's Shadows of Luminary. Yeah, I'm pretty sure of that. And the Red Skull, the clone, harvests uh, um, Xavier's brain, and he was using the powers of Professor X for himself, and that's how we end up getting the Red Onslaught, when that other Buddha figure that we got. Let me look for it for a second, because I'm pretty sure it's around here somewhere. Anyways, if I find it, I'll bring it out. But you guys should know which one I'm talking about, and that's why we were confused about, like, when we got the Build a Figure. We're like, well, what the hell are we doing with the Red Skull's head? Well, this should clear that up for you, right? And then we eventually got the regular Onslaught head with the Kitty Pryde, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. And so that's why we got that Red Skull with the Onslaught. So Red Onslaught, right? And then in this storyline, Doom and Scarlet Witch actually put like a spell on the Red Skull, which turned him to the White Skull, meaning Professor X was back in charge of that body, that Red Skull clone body, right? And when that happened, it kind of sent everything in a weird motion, where villains were becoming more heroic, and heroes were becoming villains. So it sent everybody, as far as like heroes and mutants, to the opposite end of the spectrum, meaning they were like the complete opposite of themselves. And in order to get this back, they had to do a reinversion spell, right? And in this particular moment, Steve Rogers ended up you know freeing the Red Skull, setting things back to normal, right? So then the Red Skull takes back over the body, and Charles is just pretty much trapped within inside of him, right? Well, his mind and his abilities are pretty much trapped inside this clone Red Skull, right? So eventually, the Red Skull was apprehended by Rogue and Beast, who and then Beast ends up performing like a surgery and removing these segments of that belonged to Charles Xavier, and they actually ask for the help of the Human Torch, and he pretty much incinerated, those segments that belong to Charles Xavier in order to put Professor X to rest. Then it goes into another story of a man called X, and you know, a portion of Charles Xavier's spirit was collected by the Shadow King, and the Shadow King forced this spirit into battle with him. This pretty much endless battle with Professor X, where it was just every second, every moment of every day for years they were fighting each other, and you know Professor X didn't know how to get out of this, right? So he's like, well, I'm gonna like trick him into luring the X-Men, which the Shadow King falls for, and then the X-Men pretty much freed Professor X from this astral realm, if you will. And that's when Phantom X comes in the storyline. Phantom X pretty much donated his body, leaving his own mind, Phantom X's mind, on the astral realm, and Professor X's mind in Phantom X's body. And at this time, this is where Professor X just went by the single word or the single letter of X. Like that was it. He didn't feel right being called Professor X when he's in somebody else's body, and this allowed Professor X to recreate a new body and put his mind and spirit back into this new body. So this is just a younger version of Professor X, and that's how we got to this point. Um, yeah, so I hope you guys were able to follow along with that, because it's mad confusing, and I didn't want to get into too much details on how we got here, but we're here, and now you know the full backstory. And just as a friendly reminder, man, please, if you're willing and you like what's going on with the channel, yeah, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. So we're gonna crack this Professor X open, and you know what? Like, I'm not gonna dive into his story too much, um, on this review, because there's a lot of stories out there, but overall, like, I'm gonna do a broad brush of pretty much other figures that you can incorporate into your shelf and recreate a House of X, a Powers of X shelf, if you will. You know what I mean? So let's go ahead and pause this and crack these figures open. Alrighty, so here we have the Professor out of package, and he did come with the right arm to the Tri-Sentinel, and it's kind of weird on how they keep calling this. They call this the Tri-Sentinel, and I'm gonna have to jump back into the pages of this book to get its actual name, because I don't think this is the Tri-Sentinel. It is a Tri-Sentinel, but it's not the Tri-Sentinel, as I explained earlier on in one of the other videos. And yeah, this thing's, man, coming together nicely. I mean, I'm pretty happy with it so far, and I think it's gonna be a good addition. Although, in the comic book pages, he was pretty much uh offed, like, immediately as soon as we see him, and want to say he was killed by Rasputin. But that's not to say that there isn't more, or the possibility of there being more. I just don't recall right away. But we'll look right back into that issue and see if we can get him to stand for just a second. But yeah, pretty happy with this. We did get secondary Professor X head sculpt. Not sure if those if the color, the skin tone matches up well with the hover chair version, but we're gonna find out. And we got a couple of hands here for the professor. See if I can get that on camera. Pointing hand, we've seen that with like Captain America, and this we've seen several times already. So yeah, I mean, other than that head, I mean, this is really a plain Jane type of figure, really plain. But the best part is gonna be the Cerebral helmet, and that's pretty much like version 2 portable version of Cerebro, right? So we all know about Cerebro, by now, and this is pretty much like going from the cell phone with the big battery pack to like, your standard cell phone that you have nowadays, where it's really simple, and that's pretty much what this is. We did get that head, and we're gonna take a look at this really quick, just to see how the skin tones are and if they match up, and they honestly don't. And I don't know if it's gonna be all that noticeable, but I yeah, it is. It's very, very noticeable. Once you port that head on, and I'm having a bit of a hard time. But yeah, once you force it in there, it's actually not a bad look at all, man. But the unfortunate thing are those skin tones, and on camera, it doesn't look too bad, but it's to the naked eye, it's really noticeable. And then we have this, this body, which that's not gonna look good either. So that skin tone is really too pale, and this is very uh, comic book looking, whereas the hover chair looks cartoon, and then this body we know is from a movie, so that's not gonna look good at all. And yeah, what was the other thing I was thinking about doing? Oh, check this out. So in the pages of the book, they have like this huge meeting where a lot of them are dressed up, and they're gonna meet some of the human leaders, and they're all wearing suits, man, and it's kind of awesome, the dialogue that goes on in this book, and how Professor X is like, yeah, you guys are no longer in charge, and you guys don't run anything other than your mouths. And there's like this huge, you know plot of whether or not the humans feel like the mutants are plotting on them, and therefore they feel like they got to do something to make sure, like, oh, we don't know what they're doing, and why are they being, so secretive about what's going on in Krakoa. And they even launched an attack on them, and this is going, further down the line, and I want to say this is in Dawn of X, where they send some guys that kind of look like the not the Marauders, but they kind of look like hmm. Anyway, they end up eventually getting to Professor X, and they kill him. But then they don't know that there's 5 mutants on Krakoa that can actually bring people back to life, and they eventually bring him back. And there's that kind of look there for you. And yeah, other than that, there's not really much to talk about with this figure, man. It is very, very plain Jane, like I was saying. And yeah, I hope you guys appreciate what we talked about here, as far as Professor X getting to this point. And yeah, we're pushing a little over 14 minutes now, and I think we're gonna go ahead and end that here. Yeah, in the background we got a couple of players that are in the comic books. Black Tom Cassidy has like a huge role, especially how his powers are enhanced just by being on Krakoa, which is kind of cool. We got Nightcrawler up in the corner up there. I don't know if you can barely see him now, but he was on frame a little earlier. And there's Nightcrawler, Wolverine, and then we got Cyclops, which in the new pages of Null, that the new pages of the King in Black, you see some of the X-Men return, and they pretty much look like they do here. Marvel Girl, Jean Grey, Wolverine, and Cyclops, right? And Jean Grey has a big part in that, not necessarily in the run of the story, but like she has an important segment in the story where she looks exactly like that. So eventually, if we do get King in Black figures, some people are gonna probably come back to these figures and be like, "Wait a minute, maybe we should go pick those up." And hopefully by then it's not too late. So if you guys collect and based upon what you read and what you like in the comics, these are gonna be some figures you're gonna regret not getting. And just because of this is their look now and going forward, like we already went through Dawn of X, we're in King of Black, uh, Swords of X, and the more they give us these figures, the more we're gonna go back and be like, damn, I should have picked those up while they were hanging on pegs. So yeah, man. With that being said, please like, subscribe. Up next, we're gonna do Magneto. I'm not sure how in depth we're gonna get into his story because we're probably gonna go back to the beginning, and maybe I should have started off with Professor X and Magneto. Maybe Professor X, Moira, and Magneto should have been like the first three instead of me jumping around with these figures in order to tell this story, in its timeline. But neither here nor there. Again, please like, subscribe, give it the video a thumbs up, thumbs down, comment. I'll get back to you guys, and as always, take care.